On today's episode of Locked On Lightning, we recap that crazy Jet game. The Lightning go over the 100-point threshold for the seventh time in franchise history. It looks like things are starting to turn out. The playoffs are just right around the corner. We talk about all that and more. But first, let's play that music.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to another episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Denker. Just like you for making this your first listen or your first watch if you're watching on YouTube of the day. We really appreciate all the support as always, as the Lightning are in our third season with this show, heading into the playoffs. I mean, what could we really ask for to start off a show, especially a show such as this? It really makes my job a lot easier when this team plays well. And on today's episode, we talk about the Lightning just about 20 minutes ago, just wrapped up their game against the Winnipeg Jets, winning 7-4 at Amalie, notching their 100th points of the year. That is a 7th time in franchise history. What a fantastic game. It really looked like things weren't going to get off to a smooth start, and tonight with Winnipeg getting on the board early on. But it's one of those things. The Lightning are third in the league and come from behind wins, and I have heavily criticized that statistic numerous times throughout this year, just because of the fact that really what it came down to is that the team always seems like they're playing from behind. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that they oftentimes give up the first goal of the game. And so let's look at this game. And it's weird that if you look at the stats, that the Lightning weren't leading all game. They were just completely outplaying Winnipeg for the most part. Really, just reaching the double-digit mark in shots in every period. Where Winnipeg, the most they had in a period was 9, and then the other periods, first and third, were 5 and 4. So that's only 18 shots. So it's pretty incredible to think about it, that Winnipeg having 18 shots and only coming up with 4 goals, with Cummins that's super efficient, and a team capitalized on the opportunities that were given to them 1-for-1 on the power play, whereas the Lightning had 37 shots on net, where they were 1-for-2 on the power play. So not too bad. Not going to fault them. Not going to go crazy about that. I'll take 50% on any night. Really, this was a game, though, and I stated with other games over the past couple of weeks, mainly the Dallas one, where really Dallas and I haven't seen a whole ton of Winnipeg this year, other than the matchup we had with them earlier in the year. But really, it was it looked like Winnipeg they're not going to make the playoffs. Let's face it, mathematically, really impossible. Wish for a lot of things to happen in the next week or so to get that, which I doubt it's going to happen. But it seems like oftentimes with teams that are pretty much out of playoff contention, that they start playing like playoff teams. I've seen it numerous times from numerous teams. Buffalo, we'll see it next week with Columbus and New York, where really these teams, it's very strange, the game of hockey, how things play out on the ice, and I think a lot of it has the fact that those teams that are pretty much out of it by now, those are the teams that clearly don't score a whole ton, and they try to end the year on a good note, and the best way they could do that is play good defense, dominate puck possession, and that is really playoff hockey to the T. And that is something that I said that the Lightning are going to have to get in the mode of doing. And playing physical is obviously one of those things that is incorporated into that equation. And oftentimes this year, and I have to repeat this before someone takes it out of context, is but it it seems like oftentimes this year the Lightning have had their issues with teams that are overly too physical. And what I mean by that is that there's sometimes where a team, I mean, we've seen it with Boston, we've seen it with Florida here and there, uh, numerous teams other than that. Lightning will get on the ice against a team that plays very physical hockey, will go out and punch them right in the mouth real quick. And the Lightning almost don't know what to do with that. And that is something that has at times caused issues for the Lightning. They've become too overwhelmed. And the other thing is that, even if the moment might not call for it, where you need to jump, where one of the guys on the Lightning, whether it be Maroon or we saw tonight, Corey Perry, he's known for playing physical, but at the same time, how many times have we seen Corey Perry fight this year? Really not much, or if at all. So really, I saw not only just for the most part, I mean, there were certain instances where the Lightning, it almost seemed as if this game was going to tilt fully in favor of the Jets. There were certain times in this game where I really thought the Jets were going to end up winning 7-4. But what we saw from the Lightning tonight was very, very comforting. This is the type of play that the Lightning need to carry into the playoffs with them. And this is the only way that I believe, regardless of who the Lightning play in the first round, uh, if they could play this way against any team, whether it be Boston, whether it be Florida, I mean, I doubt they're going to play Florida at this time. A lot of things need to happen from now until the next 2 weeks. For we need to have a complete monumental collapse, really, when it comes down to for that scenario to happen in the first round. But for the Lightning to play Boston, for them to play the Rangers, for them to play Carolina, or even Toronto, regardless of who any of those teams that the Lightning play, they're going to have to go out and play like they did tonight, minus the early goals here and there. I thought for the most part the Lightning played a very well played game. They were very technically sound. There wasn't too much to really complain about, but um, really, the one thing that I really was worried about early on was the amount of physicality that Winnipeg was throwing their way, and it seemed like going into the third period was when the switch finally flipped for the Lightning, where they kind of just weren't standing for it anymore. Uh, and we really saw a different team out there, especially after two periods ending in ties. Uh, a couple of players we'll talk about in just a little bit. Alex Korn having a fantastic night. Pierre-Edouard Bellemare continues to impress me on a nightly basis. Even if he doesn't get in the stat sheet, he's still a player that goes out there and contributes in the little small ways that really you can't quantify in numbers. Nikita Kucherov keeps doing the Nikita Kucherov thing, so we'll talk about that in the second segment. And of course, Nicholas Paul picking up a goal tonight as well. So we'll talk about all of that and more. But first, let's talk about our first sponsor of today's episode, and that is Built Bar. Now, with the Lightning heading into the playoffs, there's a lot of things that everyone has their their superstitions. I actually have a friend who he likes to keep candy to the side, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that he grinds his teeth. And I was saying, hey, listen, the candy to the side. If you just need to eat something, eat Built Bar. It's super healthy, only has 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar. So you'll feel that burst of energy, but you won't pay for it later on. And the best part about that is that they have tons of flavors to choose from. They got mint brownie, coconut almond. And the new one this month is white chocolate cookies and cream. And Built Bar lets you either pick a couple of flavors or mix and match. That's the best thing is that if you just want to try a couple of flavors to start off, you can. But if you just want to mix and match, just go diving into the pool head first. You go ahead and do that as well. So go to built.com, use promo code LOCK15, 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. So if you're watching us on YouTube, you're sticking right here with us. And if you're listening on an audio platform, you're joining us back right now. So before we get into all the players that I mentioned previously, just want a little reminder. Please give us a follow on our social media pages at LO_Lightning on Twitter, as well as Locked On _ Lightning Instagram. Give us a follow on our YouTube page if you haven't already. Please subscribe and follow. Hit the notification bell so as soon as a new video or any new content drops, you'll be notified. I dropped a what we call is a Locked On Now, where it's a little bit of an update. The other day I was talking about the Lightning clinching a playoff spot this year, officially the fifth straight year in which they've qualified for the NHL playoffs. So it's just, it's rolling here. The Lightning are really, it's this is the time of year that I was scared about most of all, when we were back in January or even December, where I was saying, listen, the NHL season, yes, there's tons of games left at that point, but at the end of the day, you'll blink and it'll be April, and we'll be sitting here hoping that the Lightning got their act together. And I have to say, it's been an up and down road for the Lightning as well as players on this team. I think, it could have gone a whole lot worse. You know, we look at some of the players on this team have played very well. Some of these guys have really struggled throughout the year. Braden Point, it almost seems like he's had a 55-point year with 27 goals, only in 60 games. So he's having a very good year. He's one of those players that I think that, and I was saying this to someone tonight during the game, was that Braden Point is one of those players where you the he something turns on in the playoffs. And that's the Braden Point that we all love and have fallen in love with over the last couple of seasons. And that's the Braden Point that I really thought we were going to see during the regular season. Obviously, injuries and things with COVID and things getting moved around, that kind of throws things out of whack. I really hope we were going to see a 40-goal season out of Braden Point. He's done it before, so we know he's capable of it. But uh, who knows? Maybe he'll score goals over the next 2 weeks. You never know. He might go on an absolute tear. The one player that has continued to play well over the last 2 years, especially, has been Alex Korn. I mean, the guy is an absolute point machine. Even if he's not scoring goals, which he's kind of slowed down a little bit. He had two taken away from him last night, 2 nights ago, excuse me, because of video review. But he got another one back tonight. And he has 54 points on the season, just an absolute point getter. One of those guys where even if he's not scoring goals, he's still involved in the play. Really a big focal point of the offensive production of this team. Steven Stamkos, really the leader of this team. We all know that by now. 84 points on the season, 33 goals, 74 games, just fantastic season. I mean, really, you couldn't have asked for anything more out of Stammer. For the most part, he's played an injury-free season, which we haven't had the luxury of seeing from him over the last couple of years. Everybody knows what happened right in the 2019-2020 season, missing most of it due to an injury, come to the playoffs, hurting himself in training right as they were going to jump into the bubble. We don't see him, and now the Lightning are forced to go through an entire place to get to the finals without their captain. And then fast forward to game 3, comes in, plays about 4 minutes, scores that incredible goal. Dallas. Fast forward to last year, up and down year, struggling with injury. Just you're starting to see the frustration set in. You're starting to hear here and there. I even mentioned it on here on the pod if you were with us last year. If you haven't, go back and listen to some of those episodes. I even started to talk about if the Lightning don't win the cup this year, or if they do, regardless of what happens, over the next season and a half, do we start having the conversation about Steven Stamkos? And don't get me wrong, he is a vital part of this organization and the absolute face of it. But at the same time, the organization has to start to look in the direction of the future and see, start to weigh their options. Stamkos comes back at this offseason, works his butt off in the gym, comes back, boom, 74 games played with 33 goals. Just absolutely went on a tear to begin the season. And that's really all you could ask for. And I think his production really has been the reason why that this team was able to tread water almost while Nikita Kucherov missed basically large sporadic points of the season. 39 games played for Kuch, 16 goals with 47 points. Uh, and the scary thing with Kucherov, and if you didn't catch those numbers real quick, 16 goals in 39 games with 47 points. Imagine what that looks like with 74 games played. I'll let the math people figure that one out. But the guy, the talent is just unbelievable. I mean, you saw it in this game tonight. His ability to do seemingly at times anything he wants, anything the guy wants. And it just sucks because imagine where this team would be if Cooch had 74 games underneath his belt. Imagine where this team would be if Braden Point had 74 games at least underneath his belt. Uh, uh, you know, it really is one of the, I hate to play the if game, but man, if this team was just healthy, like middle games here and there, that's fine. But missing 20 games, 15 games here and there, one has to wonder, would John Cooper have played Andre Vasilevsky so many games? And I know that's, you don't want to play that if game I said, but you got to look at the last couple of weeks. Vasilevsky 1-4 in his last 5 games played. 58 games. 58 games played. And you also look at what happened the other night where Vasilevsky gives up a couple of goals, 3 in the second period, gets pulled. Brian Elliott coming off a shutout against Buffalo comes in, completely unstoppable the rest of the game. Not saying there's any decline in Vasilevsky, absolutely not. This is strictly fatigue. I mean, we could all see it. His body language. That's not the body language of someone that has a bad attitude or is hanging their head. That's the attitude. That's the body language of someone that is just exhausted. And I think a lot of that has to do, the usage has to do with a lot of the injuries that happened this year. Also with the fact that I think John Cooper felt that, all right, somewhat shortened season last year. He's still young. He's still a young player. He's still in obviously in the prime of his career, and he will be for, I would say, maybe 5-6 more years until you start to see a little bit of a decline. But it's one of those things, and where I think especially with a coach and a player, because I'm sure he asked Vasilevsky, "What do you think is your sweet spot?" But you got to think long term. You really got to think long term with that, and I don't think John Cooper took that into account. And listen, we're not going to kill him for it. The Lightning are going into the playoffs, 100 points, like I said, on the season, and really just a fantastic night. Just a really, if I had to use one word to sum up tonight's win against Winnipeg, because like I stated before, Winnipeg, yes, they're for the most part out of it. Some things have to really move around for them in the West for them to even possibly even be on the fence of getting in. And teams like that this late in the season tend to be very tough to play against, very tough. And the Lightning showed resilience, and really that's the word you could have to sum it up with. Tonight's win was the Lightning were resilient. The Lightning went out there, they played their game, they played tough, hard-nosed hockey, and that's something that we really have not seen consistently from this team. And I think that is something that I'm sure that will be relayed to the team from John Cooper tonight, and especially over the next week, as they continue to play against tough teams. You got Toronto this week. You got Florida next Sunday. And really, you need to keep pushing. You need to keep playing that brand of hockey that won you the game tonight. And I don't mind if the Lightning take a bunch of penalties, especially for roughing and interference, stupid stuff like that, where the refs like to call that to kind of settle the game down. And we'll probably see a couple of those calls in that Florida game. And so, really, as long as the Lightning are playing physical hockey, as long as they went out there and did not get bullied around, I think this team, at the end of the day, talent will win out, experience will win out. You have a well-rested goaltender, hopefully, but by the first round of the playoffs. I think going forward, I really think that Cooper is really gonna watch Vasilevsky and pick his spots. And I said all along, heading into this month, is that's what needed to happen. So they got Detroit coming up on Tuesday. That's their next game on the 19th at home, 7:00 start. And really, they just got the crap kicked in by the Rangers by them. Another team that if the chips fall in a certain way over the next 2 weeks, I might have to be sitting here talking about how the Lightning are gearing up to face the Rangers, which team I don't think they're more talented than the Lightning, but they're not a team that I'm looking to play. I think, like I said, and I said this on the Locked On NHL show to my co-host Chris Maselli, and he looked at me as if I had 7 heads. The best matchup for the Tampa Bay Lightning right now is their opponent this upcoming Thursday, and then it's the Toronto Maple Leafs. Drop a comment down below. Let me know who would you like to see the Lightning play, because I don't. If you look at the other teams, really, I mean, who else is there that you really are confident about the Lightning going out on top in a 7-game series? Not many. So we'll talk about a little bit of that, what to expect in the next week. But first, I want to talk about our last sponsor of the day, and that is BetOnline.net. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's playoffs in the NBA and the NHL, of course, as well as Major League Baseball. I've been putting in a ton of bets on baseball. Just, I might as well just order my Pete Rose shirt now since I'm betting on baseball so much. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. Bet online, where the game starts. So, as always, if you're watching on YouTube, you're staying right here for the wrap up of the show. And if you are following on Spotify or Google Play or iTunes or wherever you listen to our audio form of this, you're coming back right now. And so good win tonight by the Lightning. They have a couple of tough opponents this upcoming week. Like I stated before the break, we got Detroit. We got on Thursday. And then you got Nashville, a team that is very, very strange team. I've seen a couple of their games this year, other than the times that they've played the Lightning. First in the wild card spot in the West. Not a lot of room separates them. Not a lot of room separates them in Dallas and Vegas. Those teams are pretty much separated by 2 points each. So, potential playoff team, we'll see. 6-3-1 in their last 10. So they are playing good hockey. And that game will be at Amalie, where this year on the road, Nashville has kind of faltered. 19-14 and 5. Not terrible, but the reason why they are in the wild card spot, and why Dallas, who we just saw, is right on their heels. So going back just to my point that I feel like I'm at this point beating a dead horse, just with the whole Vasilevsky talk, with playing him so much. Like I said, before on the verge if he were to play 2 more games of 60 games played on the season. And that is something that is a little troubling in a way. I mean, if he was playing, if we're talking about him just having a fantastic year, just really just on the verge of having a Vezina type season, that is fun. But if you want to look at his past, Vasilevsky has never, he's only played more than 55 games once in his entire career. He played 65 games in the 2017-2018 season, in which he went 44, 17, and 3 with a save percentage of 9.20 and a goals against average of 2.69. So really, how does that compare to his numbers this year? The save percentage is a little better back in 2017-18. Only 3 point a tenth of a point higher, really not much. And if you look at the goals against average, better. So really what it comes down to, and Vasilevsky, obviously, if you look at the shots he has faced, uh, totally lopsided. Not as much this year, almost pretty much 300 less, excuse me, 300 less now than what he faced back then. And what it really came down to for me, just looking at those numbers, is that opposing teams don't need to pepper Vazzy with shots. We've spoke about it numerous times on this show that really the game plan for teams is to not shoot as many shots as you can, because that's just only going to get him better, and he gets better. He gets better with every shot. Every goaltender is different. There's goaltenders that the more shots they face, the better they get over time. The less shots they take, they get better over time, and vice versa. So with Vasilevsky, he's a shot monster. He loves to eat them up, and that just shows teams are just taking better shots against some high quality shots. The game plan, really, I mean, you could see with all these teams the last couple of weeks, even tonight in certain moments. Well, not tonight because Elliott played, who, by the way, played a very good game, all things considered. He played a very tough team. The Lightning did really do a lot of, did help him a lot here and there. So, they need to do a better job on that. We've spoken about that numerous times. If you haven't heard me talk about it, go ahead and listen back to other episodes. But with Vasilevsky, I mean, really, the game plan is pick your moments, pick your spots, get the puck in close. Don't be afraid to skate up to him on the doorstep. He's a big guy, but you could expose him for some of the holes that he has down there. And I think that's what teams are doing a lot more this year. And that's why, not stick, but that's why the save percentage isn't as high now as it was back then. And, what you're starting to see now is kind of a lot of it, part of it has to do also with that mental fatigue. So, it's a bad combination. Teams are really doing a lot of good things out there in front of Vasilevsky. If he was an opposing goaltender, the Lightning had to face him. That's definitely something that I would advise our boys to do. But a lot of it also has to do with the fact that Ryan McDonagh was out for an extended period of time. Believe it or not, when McDonough's out, it almost seems as if this defensive core is somewhat out of whack. And it really falls on the shoulders of Victor Hedman, which I very much hope, and I doubt, because this isn't really what we see from the game of hockey, and we'll wrap things up there, is that for the most part, you really don't have a minutes, threshold in which you don't want Hedman to get above. But I think over these next couple of weeks, I think that maybe Cooper should scale it back just a teeny bit. You don't want your Stallion to run a lot of miles in the last couple of weeks. That's not something that we want to see out of him. Even though it's a game plan that works, and is something that we really are expected to see from him, it's not something I want to see going forward. So he's been over the 25 minute mark 4 out of his last 5 games. The only night in which he didn't hit the 25-minute mark of ice time was that Buffalo game, which, I mean, he didn't need to play that many minutes. That was a 5-0 win. I mean, you don't need your top defenseman, and I think that was a good opportunity for Cooper to get him off the ice and give him some much needed rest and really limit his ice time. So we'll monitor all of that because I really think that's what it's going to be the rest couple of weeks. And that might be a little bit boring. What we saw tonight was very encouraging. I think that all they need to do is just replicate that in every single game, regardless of the situations. Go out there and play tough physical hockey because that's where you're doing 10% of the time once the playoffs start. Give Vasilevsky some rest. Allow Elliott to play maybe half of the games left. I don't have a problem with that. Some of the ice time for some of the guys that are out there, most notably Victor Hedman. And we'll be back tomorrow to discuss some of the games. And if there's any news left to discuss, I mean, we'll talk about some other things that I saw that were in this game, as well as some players who are really starting to put it together. The Alex Killorns, Andre Plart is starting to get there. Nick Paul has just continued to impress me since he's come here, since the trade deadline. And once again, go ahead and like and subscribe to the pod. Follow us wherever podcasts are distributed. Give us a follow on YouTube as well. So that give us a thumbs up and hit that notification bell, as you will be notified as soon as pods will drop on YouTube. So that's been it for today's episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Denker. I'll talk to you in the next one.